Hey there, Mike Robbins here. It's what's today? Thursday. I think it's the 21st of October. I'm joining you live here, whether it's on Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube, a little before 10:30 Pacific time. I want to talk about accountability. Accountability. So I did a podcast about this earlier this week and just sent out our email newsletter earlier today. But I've been thinking about accountability recently on a couple of levels. And I don't know, how do you feel about accountability? I kind of have sort of a love-hate relationship with it. And again, if you're joining live either on Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube, feel free to just drop a comment in the chat in the comments there. Just let me know where you are, how you're doing. If you have questions or comments on what I'm talking about with respect to accountability, would love to hear that. If you're not joining live but you're watching the video of this after, you can still drop comments in because I usually look at those after the fact. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think accountability to me is kind of like feedback in a way, or conflict. Both things are really important to embrace, to um, understand, to more fully engage with, but they can be difficult. They can be challenging. And yeah, I've been thinking about accountability. Again, for me, it's sort of love-hate relationship. It's something that I know is important, I know is necessary, has been hugely beneficial to me in my life, to my work. I mean, the books I've written, where are they? Over there behind me. I don't know which direction, but you can see them behind my head. None of those would have happened without accountability. So many things, my life as an athlete for so many years. I played baseball from the age of 7 until I got hurt at 23 and finally retired at 25. Like, I learned, hey, Ray, good to see you. I learned a lot about accountability as an athlete because you got to be accountable to your teammates, to your coaches, to yourself. Um, but the thing about accountability, and there's different ways to think about accountability, you know, uh, culturally and just in terms of kind of public discourse and the things that we do, the things that we say. I actually think a higher level of accountability in our culture is really important. There's a lot of discussion around cancel culture and you can't say things or people use. I mean, look, I get that the sort of mob mentality on social media here can be problematic, and everybody has a voice and everybody can weigh in. But I think I heard Jon Stewart talk about this earlier, maybe last week. He was talking about, like, there's more freedom of expression, more platforms for self-expression, more public speech and discourse nowadays than ever before in the history of humanity. So this notion that people get canceled, I mean, I guess there are a few instances where that may happen, but it's about people being held accountable for the things that they do and the things that they say, and being mindful and not being able to just say racist, sexist, homophobic, hurtful, awful things. um, I think is a good thing. So anyway, there's that piece of it. I want to talk about it more on a personal level, though, for our personal lives. I mean, again, most of us aren't dealing. Look, we're all public to some degree these days with our social media platforms, but most of us aren't actually dealing with some kind of cancel culture in our real lives. But we're all dealing with accountability or lack thereof. And as I think about this more, a friend of mine named Beth reached out to me about a month ago, an old friend, someone who I just adore and hadn't been in touch with in a number of years, all that actively, but one of those old friends, you can just sort of pick up wherever you left off. And she reached out because she wanted to talk to me a bit about writing and expanding some aspects of her business, and could I support her with that. And we got to talking, and then I was sharing with her that, I've been struggling with some of my well-being practices and my self-care and wanting to get in better shape. And anyway, we just decided, like, hey, let's support each other. Let's check in on a regular basis. Let's make some commitments to each other. Let's hold each other accountable. And I noticed, like, some stuff came up for me around it, like, oh gosh, I don't know if I want to do that. Oh no, now that's going to put pressure on me. That's going to, I might not do what I say. I might let my friend down or have her, think less of me, or I might sort of paint myself into a corner. And look, a lot of reasons that we don't want accountability is because we want to quit when we feel like quitting. We want to, sit on the couch and eat potato chips instead of get up and do the thing we got to do. We want to, we don't want to mess up. We don't want extra pressure or stress. We don't want to let people down. And we also I see this working with a lot of teams, that there's this kind of unspoken thing that happens amongst teams a lot of times. It's like, hey, I won't call you on your stuff if you don't call me on my stuff. I won't hold you accountable if you don't hold me accountable. We'll let each other off the hook. Now, look, I think that one of the paradoxical natures of accountability, especially in today's world, is we have to be mindful of the fact that things are difficult and stressful for a lot of us these days. So cutting ourselves some slack, cutting other people slack is an important thing to do, but we can do it in the context of accountability. Because accountability is necessary for us to stay focused, for us to produce results, for us to push past our perceived limits. As I was mentioning before with respect to my books, look, I don't really like to write. I mean, I don't hate it, but it's not my favorite thing. I find it challenging. I find it triggering. My brain starts going crazy. I'm more extroverted. I'm more verbal than I am, just to sit down and write, whether it's an article or even a social media post, but especially like a book, is hard, is tricky. Right now, I actually, the paperback version of We're All in This Together, my most recent book, comes out in March. And I found out about this a few months ago from my publisher, and I'm excited. And the book, I wrote it in 2019. It came out in the spring of 2020, right as the pandemic was starting. But the title, We're All in This Together, is so relevant to what we've been going through for the last 19 months in a lot of ways with the pandemic, but also there's one of the 4 pillars in the book is around diversity and equity and inclusion and belonging. And so much of the intensity of the discussions we were having, especially last summer, but have continued to have around some of these really important topics of race, of gender, of orientation, of systemic racism, of privilege. There's a lot of stuff in the book that speaks about these things, but not directly to them, because I wrote it before all of this happened. And the last year and a half, as I've been working with and speaking to our clients, mostly here virtually via video, like I'm talking to you right now, a lot has happened. I've learned a lot. I've seen a lot. And so anyway, I want to write something, just a 700, 1,000, 1,200, 1,500 word preface to the paperback version of the book. Like, hey, here are some thoughts and reflections I have about the world that we've all lived through. And as it relates to all of us being in it together. So anyway, there's that. And so I said, oh, hey, I'll get it to you in October, around the 1st of October. Well, anyway, October 1st came and went. I hadn't written it. Then I renegotiated the deadline for October 18th, which was Monday of this week. And then I started to think about it and do some work on it, but hadn't finished it. And then I got an email from my editor on Monday. Hey, do you have it? And it's like, no, not yet. Sorry. Can I get it to you? And sort of renegotiated with her. Oh, I did something weird. Hold on. Let me see if I can fix that. I don't know what the heck I did, but Hamish, I put your comment up as the Chiron across the bottom. So I don't know exactly how I did that or how that works, but at any rate, so anyway, what I'm saying though about all this notion of accountability, right? This notion of being able to be held accountable, even though it can be uncomfortable, even though we don't necessarily like it, right? Even though it can be weird, it can be challenging, confronting. People can call us on things, if you will, that we may or may not want to do, right? My editor can check in and say, did you finish the preface? And I can say no, and then feel awkward and uncomfortable. And there can be consequences, like we have to get certain things done. So, but having that, look, I could have the idea that I want to write a preface to my new paperback book that when it comes out next year, but if I don't actually have a structure, a deadline, some accountability, it's probably not going to happen, especially if I'm busy, like many of us are, especially if something might be a little challenging or scary. It may be something that I resist, right? Martin, I appreciate your comment, right? Accountability is critical. Without accountability, being responsible is diluted. Accountability is a gift. Accountability is not punitive. I love this. Definitely a prerequisite to being a leader and leadership. Yeah. And Martin, to your point, though, absolutely right. 100% on all fronts. It's hard, though. It's uncomfortable. It's awkward to both create accountability for ourselves, to have that accountability. And it's also can be challenging to hold other people accountable and to do it in a way, to your point, that's not punitive, without shame, without judgment, without ridicule, without a whole self-righteous thing. And so, look, if you think of accountability as critical to what Martin's saying, it's responsibility, a gift, a prerequisite for being a leader, for actually making things happen. We hold ourselves and other people accountable all the time. I mean, even things just like practical things like meetings start on time or school starts at a certain time. Um, and well, Martin, I hear you. So what? Well, so what? It's important though. I think it's important to be mindful of the fact that certain things are challenging, right? Feedback's important, but it's challenging. Conflict's important to resolve, but it's challenging. So we have to be sensitive to ourselves. Hey, Steve, good to see you, man. How you doing? It's been a while, man. I hope you're doing well, my friend. Um, so I think again, navigating through how we set up our environment, our team, our relationships as it relates to accountability, I think we can't be cavalier about it. I think we can't be dismissive about the challenge that people have with it. Again, like feedback, essential. It's a gift. It's necessary for growth and development. And it can be hard. It can be triggering. It can be scary. It can be difficult to both give and receive effectively. Addressing conflicts can be really gnarly and challenging to address. They need to be addressed. If we don't, it can be more problematic. But I think we have to be mindful and sensitive going in, knowing that it's going to potentially be hard. Same thing with accountability. Asking for and creating the accountability around us that we need. Challenging, scary, difficult. We often resist it. Really important, though, having some compassion with ourselves and being able to do it anyway. Creating accountability within our teams, holding people accountable. Again, a certain sensitivity to it. You know, one of the things many years ago when I first started coaching people, I don't do a ton of one-on-one coaching anymore, mostly because of my schedule. But when I first started my business 21 years ago, I did a lot of one-on-one coaching, mostly personal coaching. And then I started to do a little more business coaching. But I would basically, my coaching process, if you will, and even all these years later, you know, talking to people, listening to people, kind of clarifying some of their goals and barriers and different things we talk. But ultimately, it would be whether we were talking every week or every other week or every month, whatever cadence it was, at the end of our call or our session, mostly I would do them on the phone in those days. Nowadays, if I do any coaching, it's often on, you know, Zoom or video. But it's like, okay, so what are you going to do? What are you going to commit to between now and when we talk next? And it doesn't have to be like 100 things or even 10 things, but it could be one thing, but some stretch, some action, some something. And maybe it's more of an action, like I'm going to do this thing, right? I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to call that person. I'm going to write that proposal. I'm going to, whatever, something specific. I'm going to have that conversation with my wife or my coworker or my friend or whatever. And maybe it's more of an outcome that I want to produce, like I'm going to, you know, close 2 deals this week or generate this much revenue or, you know, have this outcome happen, or I'm going to whatever the heck it is, depending on the work that you do or the life that you live or what, you know, we can't control outcomes. So, you know, holding people accountable. But again, think of in life, in sales as an example. Everyone who is in sales has a goal, but even if you're not in sales, you have certain goals, and some of those things, there's other people involved, there's other factors, but the accountability is there's a certain time, a cadence, weekly, monthly, quarterly, biannually, annually, that we're going to check in. How did we do? Right? My wife and I have a meeting with our financial advisor tomorrow just to check in and catch up, and there's accountability on both sides. Both, hey, we made some commitments at the beginning of the year for how much money we're going to save and invest, right? He's going to check in to see how we're doing with that and look at that. But we're also going to check in. Hey, you said you were going to make sure our money was in these different places, and how's it doing? How's it performing? Are we in the right place? So there's that mutual accountability, right? Having those structures in place, what it does, it orients you. You know, my friend Beth and I, right, who I was talking about. So she's a yoga teacher, I'm supporting her in wanting to do some more writing and expanding of her business. She's supporting me in some sort of self-care, well-being practices. And one of the commitments I had made to her, not this past week, but the week before, was that I was going to do a few workouts and I was going to do yoga for the first time in forever, which I actually enjoy doing it. I just have a lot of resistance because I'm not that good at it. It's kind of hard. It's out of my routine. It's awkward. I have to take the time and right. So anyway, we were going to talk last weekend. We talk on the weekends early on Saturday mornings just to check in. And I hadn't done yoga yet. And I knew I was talking to Beth at 8 o'clock. So I woke up really early on Saturday morning last week and I did yoga right here in my office, right over there on the floor where my yoga mat sits. And I walk over it all the time. But it felt great. And I did it because I told Beth I was going to do it. And I knew I was going to talk to her. Now, look, if I hadn't done it, it wasn't like Beth's not going to be my friend anymore, or I'd be in trouble, or I would be bad, or I failed. It would just be like I'd have to own up to the fact that I didn't do what I said I was going to do. And I wanted to, but without the accountability, without telling Beth, I'll do it once this week and then we'll talk again next Saturday, it wouldn't have happened. So I wouldn't have gotten those books written without accountability, without a deadline, without someone, saying, and Ray, I don't know that it's specifically obligation. That word triggers me a little bit. Like, I don't like this notion of sort of duty or obligation. There is an obligatory element. It's more commitment. It's like someone holding us to our commitment and then us pushing past our perceived limit. Look, in life sometimes, I mean, I think about this for better or worse. As a student, I was often, last minute with my assignments or papers, but I remember being in college and like having to pull an all-nighter to write a paper, which isn't a healthy way to do. I'm not advocating we do that, but it was due the next day. So I just had to get it done. Right? Things that matter, people that matter. When our girls were babies, they would cry in the middle of the night. And one of us had to get up and tend to the baby because there was a level of accountability. Like, that's our child. That child needs something. We're going to go tend to it. Yeah, another way to think of it, Hamish, is responsibility, right? And thinking of responsibility, to your point as well, and it's how we grow. It allows us to see the effects, right? And own up to the responsibility of the consequences, if you will, of not getting something done. Again, showing up late to a meeting, just as an example. We all do it. We've all done it. Doesn't mean we're bad, doesn't mean we're wrong, doesn't mean we're flaky. It means like we just didn't, even in today's world, in this weird Zoom world, right? If you schedule yourself back to back to back and then I'm late. Have you had that happen? You're clicking on Zoom meetings late. I'm sorry, and having to apologize because it's like, oh, I didn't set my day up in a way, or I wasn't responsible with my time. The people now on the Zoom have to wait for me and I have to deal with whatever feelings come up and having to apologize for showing up late, as an example. Again, being aware of the impact that we have. I mean, back to the whole thing about people being held to a high standard in our culture today. I get where it can be an oversensitivity. I get where it can go down that negative path of sort of cancel culture, but I think it's a good thing for people in positions of leadership and authority and privileged positions to be held accountable for the things that they do and say. We can't just say whatever the heck we want to, right? We can express ourselves, we can be authentic, we can be real. But again, even me here on this platform, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, doing this live and having this video out in the world, like I'm not editing myself in some negative way, but I'm aware of the fact that what I'm saying will reach people and could have an impact positively or negatively. You don't have to like it or agree with it, but I'm mindful of like, I'm not going to get on here and start saying all kinds of, mean and offensive stuff because A, that's not consistent with who I am. And B, there's like a certain level of accountability, again, and all of us have to navigate that. How do I show up authentically? How do I speak my truth? How do I be myself? And at the same time, be aware of the fact that we hold certain roles and positions in life, friends, parents, coworkers, bosses, managers, whatever the case may be. So anyway, I'm trying to think if there's any other thoughts around accountability, questions that you have. I'm appreciating the comments that are coming through on Facebook and LinkedIn. Thank you so much. But I think, again, if we can embrace accountability, look for where can you create some accountability in your life right now? Where would it benefit you, even if it's a little scary? Where are there things you're procrastinating, putting off, needing to get done? Right? I mean, it could be simple things like that closet you need to clean out, or that thing you need to clean up, or wanting to do more or less of something, whatever it is. Can you find someone in your life who you trust to hold you accountable in a positive way? Hey, I'm struggling to whatever, get more sleep or eat more healthy or be on my phone less or clean out my closet or manage my storage unit or do that project or take that risk or make this change, whatever it is. And in service of actually pushing past whatever limits we may perceive to be there, can we have another human being who we trust hold us accountable, so that you reach out to a friend or a coworker or someone and say, hey, I'm scared to have this conversation with someone. I'm scared to make this request, but I'm going to tell you that I want to do it and commit to doing it in the next week, even though I'm scared, or the next day or the next month or whatever the heck the time is. And then check back in with you and let you know if I did it or I didn't do it. Sometimes not doing it. Look, when I coach people, when they make commitments to me and they don't do any of them or most of them, then we just got to check in. Like, what happened? What got in the way? What stopped you? Why did you say you would do it and then not do it? No judgment, no shame. You're not a terrible person. You're not weak, wrong, bad, stupid. You're just a human being who said something and then didn't do it. Let's look at that. And if it's a consistent thing, what is that keeps getting in the way? Are you really committed to these things you're saying you're going to do? Or are you just saying them to look good or sound good or get me to shut up or get off of our coaching session or whatever? On the one hand. On the other hand, when people make commitments to me and they're doing all of them, I did them all, like, great, and they're making forward progress. But then after a while, if it was yes, yes, yes on everything, I would often say, I'm not sure these are big enough stretches, because you're not having any of them come up and say, oh, I couldn't do that, or I got scared to do that, or I got too busy to do that. Too busy often being, yes, that happens, but more accurately, I didn't prioritize it, or it freaked me out too much that I put it off and then decided other things were more important. Again, there's learning and there's growth in making commitments, in having accountability, whether we do the things that we said or not. Look, I break my word all the time to things that I commit to. I'm not necessarily proud of it, but I get in relationship with, oh, I didn't do it. Why didn't I do it? What was that about? Can I learn from that? Can I grow from that? Can I have additional accountability around me to support me to get those things done? It's the notion of, right, the metaphor is you throw your hat over the wall and then you have to climb over the wall to get the hat, right? Or just lose the hat. But that's what accountability is. It's throwing our hat over the wall and having someone look, and try to have people that you trust and feel safe with hold you accountable. But will actually hold you accountable and won't just treat you with kid gloves. Like, it needs to be a balance, right? Sometimes we need some tough love. Sometimes we need some real soft love. Know what you need, know what you want, but look for places where you can create accountability. Look for how you can help and support other people by holding them accountable with love, with compassion. It's necessary. And Hamish, to your point, right? Team sports are a great example of that, but also teams inside of organizations. We have to rely on each other. We have to count on each other to produce the result. Families are often that way. Everyone's got to play their position, but collectively, the synergy of it is we're greater than the sum of the parts. So it's super important for our own growth and development. It's super important for our team's growth and development and success. And it's really important for us at a cultural and societal level, especially these days. So yes, accountability can be difficult. It can be scary. It can be confronting. It can be uncomfortable. It can be awkward. That's the difficulty part, but it's necessary for growth, for development, for success. So thanks so much for joining. Thanks for all the great comments. If you're watching the video of this after, again, feel free to drop a comment in the comment section. I will look at everything and respond accordingly. But if you have ideas or suggestions for future topics for me to discuss here on social, let me know. If you want to stay connected with me and my work, go to our website, which is mike-robbins.com. You can check out my weekly podcast and videos of my TED Talks and books and all the other things that are on there. But I appreciate your interest in my work, and I'm grateful that we're connected here on social media. And I will see you again next week or the next time I come on live. Take care.